Yes, we broke the story to you about the concealed carry scandal, and this before there was the NSA story. There was the NSA story on the state level. A number of states have kind of been dealing with this. Missouri was the first to where it really exploded, where you had the state that sent names of concealed carry lists to the federal government, to Social Security and ATF. They sent them to Social Security on the excuse that Social Security was investigating a possible crime, although nothing ever came of it. That investigation went away. So now it's all gone down to Real ID. And listen to this audio, and then we're going to talk to the Missouri Torch's Duane Lester. This is Edward Ardini, counsel to the governor. He's trying to make the case to the Bipartisan Investigative Committee for Privacy Protection on the Real ID Act.
Yeah, and I think we just disagree on that. I think when it says in order to comply with the goals or standards of Real ID, I mean, I think that's a purpose provision in there. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I would disagree with that.
Was it ever your recommendation as the governor's attorney for anybody to go back to the General Assembly to see if they could get clarification?
No.
Why?
Yeah.
I didn't think it was necessary.
See, we're not even supposed to be fully implementing Real ID anyway. Missouri law prohibits that. Joining me right now from the MissouriTorch.com is the editor and proprietor, Duane Lester. Good afternoon to you.
Hey, thank you, Dana. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. I love this headline. Nixon Council says they can implement Real ID as long as they're not implementing Real ID. What has been the latest from this story? We know that the governor's office has really been dancing around answering concretely whether or not they were fully complying with something they weren't allowed to by law.
Well, this is what the stunner was at the end of a full day of testimony, of really testimony that was kind of blah. At the end of the day, Edward Ardini comes in and tries to explain to everybody that the law says, and I'll read to you what the law says. It says they can't amend procedures for applying for driver's license or ID cards in order to comply with the goals and standards of the Real ID Act of 2005. So he comes in and says, we can do these things like biometrics and fingerprinting and scanning documents as long as we're not saying it's because Real ID wants these things done. So basically, if they had a checklist of 39 things that you need to do to meet the qualifications for Real ID, and they met all 39 but said it was for another reason, then they're not really violating the law. Just because they're complying with Real ID doesn't mean they were trying to. I mean, they were doing something else for your own good, really.
Right. Yeah, it's all for your own good. Are we ever going to see Governor Nixon come and testify? As I know that there were subpoenas that were out that had been basically they're not in existence anymore. And I know Tim Jones had said that they were going to file again to try to get Nixon to answer questions. Are we ever going to get any answers from this? I was a little bit dismayed at how some folks in the GOP side were handling this.
Well, what's interesting, and I apologize for that. I'm in Northwest Missouri where mufflers are optional.
Yay!
What's interesting about that is they're going to have another hearing. Representative Stanley Cox said they may have one in August, on August 14th. And the last folks that came through in this last hearing were all the folks that were subpoenaed. And they're getting more and more frustrated. And when I asked a circuit court judge about this in order to comply justification, and he said he couldn't speak on it because this might actually come to a court that he may preside over. So if Nixon doesn't get subpoenaed to appear before this committee, it's possible he could get subpoenaed to appear in court at a later date. And the reason why I think that is, one of the questions that was asked during these hearings that I found the most compelling, I can't remember which legislator it was that asked this, but she repeatedly asked these people from Nixon's office, when leading up to the vote on HB 361, which is what we called the Anti-Real ID Act, leading up to that, just the vote, were there any discussions about how that would impact Missouri voters? And they all said yes. And then she'd follow up, did you think it would impact them negatively? And they'd say yes. And one thing that was mentioned was the fact that Missourians, if the Real ID Act were implemented and enforced, Missourians would have a hard time getting on airplanes because they'd have to have a passport. And the question was asked, and if you guys thought this was so bad, then why did Governor Nixon sign it into law?
Right. That's exactly it.
That makes me wonder if from the beginning, from before he signed this into law, they intended to go ahead and do whatever they wanted and justify it by saying they weren't actually doing this in order to comply with Real ID.
Right. Oh my gosh. Well, this is this we're gonna see how this plays out, and I know we'll be talking to you again soon because unfortunately, this, like the Benghazi and NSA and everything else, this isn't going to be a quick solve. Duane Lester, the Missouri Torch, we'd love to have you back and talk to you again.
It'd be my pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks, Duane. Take care out there.
Bye.
Bye.